Welcome, movie fans. This is Joe at the movies, and today we will be reviewing The New Mutants. Um, this video is sponsored by my good friend Dale Adams. He loaned me the movie so I could watch it without paying for it, so thanks, buddy. This one's for you. New Mutants is a 2020 film written by Josh Boone and Nate Lee and directed by Josh Boone. It is the final film in Fox's X-Men franchise, and I gotta say it was an interesting choice for your final film. I realize a little backstory: this movie is actually about 5 years old. It was made several years ago and was intended to be released, I think, in 2016 originally. Anyway, the movie had numerous release dates throughout the years. It kept going back for reshoots and retooling in the editing bay. A few times, even brought in a couple of other directors to work on it. From what I've heard, the version they ended up settling with, ironically, is the closest version to the original one they had to begin with. So I guess they did a lot of work for nothing. But this movie was delayed several years due to production problems and post production problems, and then delayed like three more times this year due to the COVID-19 pandemic. So it finally got released this fall. It made very little money, as can be expected with most theaters shut down right now, and is now available on demand and on DVD and Blu-ray, so all home video options. Um, like I said, this is the final film in Fox's X-Men franchise. I gotta say, for the most part, I enjoy the X-Men movies. Some are really, really good, top notch. X-Men Days of Future Past is one of my favorite comic book movies of all time. Logan is right up there. Um, and then it's got some not so great additions, such as X-Men 3 The Last Stand, not one of many people's favorites. Um, this movie is not among the best, certainly, of the X Men franchise, and but certainly not among the worst either. It would fall somewhere in the middle. Um, it's kind of a it's kind of trying to introduce a new class of X Men. That's what it's based on, the New Mutants comic from the '80s, and that's what the purpose of that comic was. The X Men were supposedly dead, and Professor Xavier recruited a new crop of teenagers to train, and their book was titled The New Mutants. And so this movie is loosely based on one of the more popular arcs from the original series, called the Demon Bear Saga. And when I say loosely based, it is very loosely based on the comic. Um, but the movie itself, it kind of is a dark version of the X-Men. Instead of a school, you have these group of teenage mutants who are just discovering their powers. Instead of a school, they're in a mental institution of sorts. Instead of Professor X, you have Dr. Reyes, who is it's kind of got a little bit of a One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest feel in the first act, and she's kind of your Nurse Ratchet, I guess. The movie's supposed to be a horror movie within the comic book genre, which I appreciate. I like when comic book movies have gotten really big over the last 10, 15 years, and I really like it when they explore the concept of superheroes within other genres. I hope going forward with that we see more of that, especially with the Marvel movies to come. Um, this was a stab at trying to do a superhero horror movie, and they did all right with that. So I want to get into the pros and cons of the movie. I would say one of the pros was that it was short. The runtime was only 90 minutes, and the pacing kept up with that. It was you really didn't get bored. And one thing I want to take the time to talk about for a second is I did take a film class when I was in college, and the professor of the class said something to me that really stuck with me. He said it on the first day, and he said that the first job of a movie is to entertain you. If you're bored, you're not going to get anything out of a movie, no matter how good it is. So, the first job of a movie, I believe, is to entertain you. This movie entertained me. I was not bored. The short runtime had this a lot of comic book movies that I think they feel tempted to go 2 hours, 2 hours 10 minutes, somewhere in that area. I think that would have worked to the detriment of this movie. So I applaud the producers and the director, whoever made the choice to keep this movie relatively short, because it kept the movie moving at a good pace. Another pro is it had interesting characters. You didn't really get a lot of development because you've got, I think, five. It's an ensemble cast with five main characters. One character is a Native American named Danny Moonstar, is the character's name. She would be your main character, but it's more of an ensemble movie. Dealing with all five of their issues, but you don't really get too deep in a lot of anybody else's issues. But I'll get to that a little bit more on that later. Um, my final pro is it had a strong third act. The third act I find in a lot of movies, especially comic book movies, they kind of fall apart in the third act. They have a good start and a decent enough middle, and then the third act they really don't know what to do with it, how to give a satisfactory conclusion. I felt this movie, the writers and director did know the direction they wanted to go in, and they did give it a very, I thought, clean and satisfying third act, which is always nice to see. I really get bummed when I watch a movie that I start off really into, and then by the end of it, I just don't care anymore. That did not happen with this movie. Um, Now, the cons of the movie. They should have pushed the horror elements a little further. I realize the movie was rated PG-13, so you have to work within those confines. But I think the movie would have been served better with maybe an R rating, because it doesn't look like it had too big of a budget, unless all the delays and reshoots inflated the budget. Uh, Either way, with the pandemic, they are not going to recoup what was put into this movie. So I think they should have pushed the horror elements a little further, and maybe took it to an R rating. Go a little darker with it. I think that would have served the story pretty well. Um, Although I said the pacing was good, the second act drags a little too much teenage melodrama that doesn't really go anywhere. If you're going to give me as a middle-aged man teenage melodrama in your movie, it needs to mean something. And I kind of felt like the stuff they were doing in this didn't really go anywhere and didn't have any real impact on the story. I think the writers kind of thought they were doing more of a character study, and I just didn't really get that, because with that short of a runtime and that many characters, you didn't really have time to get into the characters very much. So I could have done that with a little less of that and got to more action. But like I said, there wasn't much of that. Like I said, the pacing was really good. The movie's not really long enough to give you too much of anything. With five characters in an ensemble, and so there's that. The final con is it's just for the end of a cinematic universe or a franchise, whatever you want to call the what Fox did with the X-Men. This was just not a climactic ending for the X-Men franchise. It actually kind of felt like the start of a new franchise, even though it does reference not really specific events from any X-Men movie, but the X-Men movie. It does reference the X-Men, that they are in the same universe. Uh, I would have been interested to see maybe a trilogy with these characters and see what other stories they would have adapted. I kind of saw hints of some things, just being a comic book fan when I was younger in the 90s, mostly in early 2000s. So yeah, I would have liked to have seen a little more with that, but sadly we don't get that. Uh, Prior to this movie coming out, the last movie, which I think was intended to be the final movie for the X-Men franchise, was Dark Phoenix. That movie is terrible. That is by far the worst of the X-Men movies. So, though this didn't feel like a climactic ending for the franchise or for a superhero franchise, it's certainly better than the previous ending for it. Personally, I think Logan would have been the best ending. I don't think they can get better than that, but that's neither here nor there. I figure in the next 5 years, Disney through Marvel Studios will be rebooting all the X-Men. So um, I would say I would recommend this if you're a fan of like superhero movies and B horror movies. It's a decent mix of that. If you're really invested in the X-Men storyline, you might want to watch it just for completionism's sake. But it's, it's not going to give you a satisfying resolution to anything in that regards. So anyway, you can find the New Mutants, like I said, on any streaming service, or on Blu-ray or DVD if that's your preferred method. Leave a comment. Tell me what you guys think. Don't be afraid to hit the like button, and definitely don't be afraid to subscribe. Thank you guys, and I will see you at the movies.